Hi, I'm Steve Moriarty from Moriarty's Gem Art. We represent ourselves online as MoreGems.com, and today I'm going to show you my techniques for dopping stones. And this technique is particularly good for heat-sensitive stones, although I use it for everything I do, and the process I use is with epoxies. Okay, today I'll be dopping up this opal that we're going to facet. This is Ethiopian opal. I don't know it to be real heat sensitive, but not a stone I'd like to heat up a lot. So to do this, on this dop we have some clay, and I just impress it into the clay. And then I select a dop that's about the size of the stone I'm dopping up. Put it in, center the stone. And this size of a dop allows me to center it fairly accurately. You can also use a millimeter gauge like this, but I find that using the dops themselves is much easier, much more accurate. So just try and center it on this dop both directions. Push it down into the clay so it stays in place. Check that it's flat to the dop. Because this is probably a very, very important part of the process, because if you don't get it centered, you lose a lot of material in cutting. So once I feel it's centered, I remove this dop, pick a dop that's half the size of the stone or a little bigger than that. You need enough gluing surface around it, because I'm not going to glue between the dop and the stone. This will aid in removing it later. So again, make sure it's down flat. You can double check it this time with a millimeter gauge to see that it is centered, although I do find that the dops do end up quite accurate. So now what I'm using is a 2-part epoxy. So you use equal amounts. Just mix them really good. You probably have about 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes to work with this. And before this, you want to make sure that your stone's clean and the dop's clean. You can use a little alcohol or acetone to wipe them off, keep all the oils off. And all you're going to want to do is kind of put it in a crease all the way around the stone. And then I generally try and work it in a little bit. You don't want it dripping down over the edge, because when you're working with epoxies and you start cutting on it, if after it's dried you start cutting into the epoxy, it tends to break the seal. So you want to make sure that the epoxy doesn't flow over the edge, and if it does, you need to cut it off, because this lap tends to pull on the epoxies and you'll break loose the dop, which is the worst thing that can happen to you in faceting. So you just manipulate it a little bit for a couple minutes till it gets a little tackier, just trying to keep enough on the stone, but not too much that it flows over the edge. then after a short while you just leave it set. You'll want to leave this set overnight, 24 hours, probably at least 8 hours. You get a much tougher seal on it, and I've lost a lot of stones trying to rush it. So best is to take your time and let this epoxy seal real well. So now I'm going to show you how to remove the dop after it's been transferred. Once you're done with the stone, you can just put it in acetone to remove the dop, but during the transfer you do have to use a little heat. But because we did not put glue between the dop and the stone itself, we can just remove the glue that's around the stone. And this is a tanzanite, and this is the reason that I started doing this process was a tanzanite. But unfortunately it was 100 carat tanzanite that I dopped up with wax, and just in heating the dop to remove it, I shattered 100 carat tanzanite. So that got me looking for ways to use less heat, less risk of damaging a stone. That tanzanite was probably just a fluke, something in it, but it was a bad day. So now we just kind of heat this blade up, and then run it once quickly around the stone, between the dop and the stone itself. Try not to put any pressure on the stone because you can chip the edge of the stone easily. And if you're lucky, it pops off. There we go. So because there was no epoxy right on the face of the dop, all we had to do was remove the glue around the edge, and it popped off easily. So occasionally with the epoxy, it does seep under the dop a little bit, and you will have problems just picking the glue away. So you will have to heat the dop slightly to get it to remove. So if you have any questions, leave it in the comment section below. And I want to thank you for viewing this video. And I'm Steve Moriarty from MoreGems.com.